back in Memphis, Tennessee for the Chief Auto Parts Mid-South Nationals as we watch a crew chief of Bruce Larson, Maynard Yanks, working on his engine, getting ready for his face-off against Mark Oswald in the funny car semifinals. And Steve is there.
I know it's hard to see, but there's a great big hole in the engine block of Mark Oswald behind that oil line. And coming back to the pits, headed up the racetrack, I found the reason why. Well, half of the reason why. That's a connecting rod, or that was a connecting rod. And at 9,000 RPM, when one of these gets loose, and it's hard to say why, whether it broke off of the pan or on the big end, it creates total havoc. When they take the oil pan off this engine, there'll be a lot more damage than a hole in the side of the block.
You ever wonder why they muscle these engines in by hand and don't use a hoist? Well, they save about 5 to 10 minutes in time by just muscling the motor into the chassis rather than setting up all the intricate hoists.
Okay, well, that time is of the essence. That's what drag racing's all about. As we get ready for round 2 of Top Fuel, Frank Bradley and Gary Ormsby. What a face-off this is going to be.
And it's the opposite of Bob Glidden and Warren Johnson. These two have been racing each other for 20 years and are still great friends.
Okay, as Bradley does his burnout, let's go to Don Garlits in the staging lanes.
Well, Brock, with the season a full one-third underway, the surprise is that Lori Johns, the young debutante from Corpus Christi, leads the Winston Championships. She won the Winter Nationals and the Southern Nationals on the way to doing this. The challenge that we all expected out of Bernstein and Perdome has not materialized. In fact, Perdome was beaten in the first round this morning, and Bernstein is sort of struggling. Former world champion Dick LaHaye and Joe Amato have not made their move that we all expected at this point. And the world champion, Gary Ormsby, is not much better. The points are very close among the top leaders in the class, and that means we're going to have a good, close season of racing. And, of course, the fans like that. It makes it very exciting.
If there's a sleeper, Don, in this whole deal, I think it's that man right there, Frank Bradley. He has not broken many parts this year. He qualified number 7 here at 5:07. He has run into the 4s on several occasions in Santa Rosa, California. The Beard, as the fans call him. His crew chief is Junior Connerty. He's responsible in many ways for that 5:07 that came in qualifying on Friday. Earlier in this event, Frank Bradley met up with Shirley Muldowney. Muldowney qualified 10th at 5:16. Her crew chief and husband, Ron Tobler, turning the wrenches. The car now owned by Larry Minor Racing. It was Muldowney in the far lane, Bradley in the near lane, and Muldowney gave Frank a driving lesson right off the starting line. She had a tremendous hole shot, appeared to be on her way to victory when the engine self-destructed, and Bradley got around, putting himself in the position here in round number 2 to face off with the Winston champion, Gary Ormsby, who went through 4 race cars in a single season to amass enough Winston points to take the title. No one worked harder in season 89 than did his crew chief, Lee Beard.
And the NHRA rule changes for 1990, taking away the electronic clutches and the gear ratio of mandatory 320 maximum, really affected this team because they were running on a 290 gear and they had that electronic clutch dialed in. Lee Beard was definitely hurt by that move.
And he's very glad it's a long, long season as they hope to get a handle on it. In the near lane, pre-staged, is the car dealer from Roseville, California, Gary Ormsby. Far lane, Frank Bradley, the winner of the California Nationals last season. They're ready, and they're away. Ormsby with an early lead. Ormsby has problems. Bradley goes on to win it. 5:08, 275 miles per hour. 2 rounds in a row. Bradley has found himself behind, only to have his opponents blow up.
Junior, you got to be pleased. Frank got out a little late, but ran him down in the lights.
Well, we made a lot of changes between rounds. We had a lot of clutch changes, and we just went for it.
You had to be real nervous about this lane.
We were a little bit, but I think they're straightened out.
Well, Ormsby took a tremendous starting line advantage on Frank for that start. He looked like the Ormsby of 1989, and it looked like he was going to hold on to it. Evidently, he must have had a lean-out jet that turned on because the engine was charging just fine, and all of a sudden you see a lot of smoke come out of the pipe, indicating a blown piston. And of course, Bradley just charged on to win the race.
Well, they're rushing to get Frank Bradley off the racetrack. And Frank, even if Gary Ormsby hadn't had driveline problems, your 5:08 would have been tough to match.
Yeah, well, things are starting to come around a little bit. We've been running good, smoking tires back and forth with his new clutch setup, you know. Guys are doing a good job, but I don't want them to know that.
Might have to give him a raise.
Yeah.
All right, so Frank Bradley capitalizing on the misfortunes of Ms. Maldani, and Gary Ormsby moves on to the semifinals.
Now there is Buzzy Carter, crew chief for Eddie Hill. He's behind the car. Eddie's wife Percy in front of the car because they're being very careful to line this machine up right in those black tracks of the burnout.
And here at Memphis, we can really see those tracks. And notice how Eddie Hill moves his front end around to make sure that that car stays right in the tracks, following the crew's instructions very carefully.
Well, if you don't do that, the burnout was just a worthless, expensive exercise. Who's going to race Eddie Hill? Well, over in the far lane, the big red car of Kenny Bernstein, and we will ride with him. His crew chief, Dale Armstrong, is finally sneaking up on him. They haven't been in the fours yet, but in round number 1 here, Bernstein ran a 5.06 to defeat Jim Head. Armstrong was very happy with that performance, as there's a lot more in the car. And when you're so conditioned to winning, as Dale and Kenny are, having won 4 funny car titles, it's tough to be in this position. Eddie Hill knows how tough it is. The man out of Wichita Falls, Texas, he actually qualified a bit better than Bernstein, and he, with the help of crew chief Buzzy Carter, defeated Tommy Johnson Jr. in round number 1.
Well, actually, the problem in the Bernstein camp has not been the driving. Kenny has been doing an excellent job in the top fueler, much better than I thought he would, being he came out of a funny car. It's been mechanical problems is what plagued the team.
Well, and you're right, Don Garlitz. Dale Armstrong says, take that, Texan. It was Kenny Bernstein off the mark first with a very nice 5.06 elapsed time. Let's go down to the starting line. Brock Yates will be with Dale Armstrong. Brock?
Congratulations. This right lane seems to be working now for everybody.
Well, yeah, it came around. Obviously, we didn't have choice, but we went a different way on the clutch than we've had in the last few months, and maybe it's going to show something.
Well, it sure was a good pass. Congratulations. Okay, Dale Armstrong, pleased man.
Well, as you hear, it's very difficult for drivers or crew chiefs to talk about anything else but the clutch. That's on everyone's mind, including the crew chief for John Force, Austin Coyle, as he adjusts the valves on that Hemi engine. We'll be back for more drag racing action from Memphis right after these words. Hang in there with us.